Things are always bright in the Sunshine State, but extra bright these days. Florida has always produced talent, but lately Florida schools are taking full advantage of home cooking. The big three, Florida, Florida State, and Miami, all ranked in the top 10 of the recruiting rankings for the first time since 2012. We're going to bring it back here in studio to talk a little bit more about that with our friend Cooper Petagna. And Cooper, I could make the argument maybe that Miami is the school of those three that's having the most success with players from the state of Florida, if you look at the total numbers and the amount of top 247 players. But in your eyes, who is having the most success in Florida?
Well, I'm going to sound like a guy that worked for Mario Cristobal at one point. I'm going to go with Miami. They might be the lowest ranked out of the big three in the Sunshine State, but you look at the job that they've done. Almost half of their class, over half their class, right now is from the Sunshine State. So they've done a really good job in Florida. They also have the most top 247 representation as well. They have 5 guys that's won more than Florida in Florida State. So they've done a really good job there. Guys like Zaquan Patterson and JoJo Trader were really, really big gets for them. And you look back a year ago, 2023, top 10 ranked class there as well. They had 16 guys from the state of Florida. Now, the pushback on that, 4 of those guys came from IMG Academy by way of another state. You also have to factor that into the equation as well. But I think Miami's doing a lot better job once you look under the hood of the 3 programs that I think you can make a pretty convincing argument for Florida, Florida State, and Miami. They have done a really good job in the Sunshine State. I have to give the edge to Miami, though.
Yeah, all 3 of those schools having so much success with their own in-state players. Miami, number 10 in the recruiting rankings, Florida State, number 4. And their rankings have slowly been going up and up and up each year since Norvell has gotten there. And we know he's been very opportunistic in the portal, but how are you seeing the on-field success that we've got going on this year translate on the recruiting trail?
First 2 years under Mike Norvell on the field, 8-13. Last 2 years, 17-3, right? So they got a huge opportunity here in 2023 to make their mark. But take a look at the last 2 recruiting classes as well, number 16 and number 4. That would be the first top 10, first top 5 finish for Mike Norvell. So when you're able to marry that recruiting success with what you're doing on the field, that is a huge advantage to a program like Florida State and any program around the country. They have to take advantage of that window. This is one of the most dangerous teams in all of college football when it comes to the transfer portal. I think they are the transfer portal destination in all of college football. You add what they've been able to do in 2024. This is like a very scary recipe for Florida State. And if you're Miami and Florida, you're looking at FSU right now. You get the organic high school building through there along with the transfer portal supplement. This is kind of a scary recipe for Florida State and anybody that's got to go through them as well.
Yeah, it's all coming together. Florida State, 4. We're moving up a little bit to Florida, but it's still kind of maybe fair to question what we've seen on the field. There's also questions what we've seen on the recruiting trail with the Jaden Rashada saga last year. So what is it that Napier is doing right now that has him with the number 3 class?
I think trust in the process, right? And that's a pretty vague statement, but back at Alabama, that's what we used to say, right? And Billy Napier was on that staff when I was there, and that's what it was all about. It was about trusting the process. Billy Napier has not panicked, and if you go back to year 1, there are a lot of things that happen if you're a Florida fan that make you think, hold on, do we have the right guy here? And I would point to the Jaden Rashada kind of saga there, everything that played out in terms of the NIL standpoint. And then you look at Florida this year, what they've been able to do, especially on the defensive line, the number 3 class in the country, a really good class in 2023. Kelby Collins, Cameron James, you back that up with LJ McCray. This is a guy that's kind of dug in this staff, and they've just been steady Eddie, right? I think the wins will come. I think the thing for Florida is just being patient, right? So they've done a really good job. I think they're righting the ship on the field. They got a big one against Georgia this weekend. If they can win that, I mean, who knows what that could do for them in terms of recruiting momentum on the field as well. So he's got it going. Florida's sitting right now number 3, and Florida State's recruiting well. Miami's recruiting well. So for them to be the number 1 school in the state of Florida in the rankings, top 5, that's a big testament to what Billy Napier and his staff have done.
Yeah, you mentioned how scary it is when it all comes together. How about all 3 of these schools having the success that they're having? At the beginning of the segment, I told you it's been 12 years since those 3 schools were all ranked in the top 10 in the recruiting rankings. When they are able to lock the borders and keep that talent home, how does that affect the recruiting landscape nationally?
Well, it's been a long time. Like you said, it's been 12 years, right? So what I did, I kind of went back to last year, and you look at Georgia, the two-time defending national champions. They took 9 players out of the state of Florida, and some pretty good ones, right? 5-star defensive lineman Jordan Hall, Raylan Wilson, another guy, Damon Wilson. And then you got Ohio State. They're in there this year with a guy like Jeremiah Smith, but they only have 2 other commitments. Those guys aren't in the top 2, 4, 7. Georgia this year, they got 3 commitments as well. So Alabama as well, they've kind of stymied those guys all together, but that's been a team collective effort, if you want to call it that. Florida, Florida State, Miami, they've done a great job prioritizing Florida talent. Every year you look at the NFL draft, who represents the most draft picks? It's Texas and it's Florida, right? So I think the key for these guys moving forward, you got to put a fence around the state, and there's plenty enough to go around for those big 3. But right now, I mean, it's tough sledding for the Ohio States and the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world. And they will get a guy like Jeremiah Smith or a Jameer Grimsley or whoever it is. But you can't let them make a living there, right? That's got to be the difference. And I think those 3 programs, as it shows where they are ranked, they're having a lot of success on the field, off the field as well. The other thing, they're all aligned. They're all financially invested in this, and I think that's the other thing that's a great equalizer when you look at those 3 schools.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the fallout is from all of this as those schools continue to build up in the recruiting rankings. It's always felt like a sitting giant, right? A sleeping giant. They were, as soon as they figured it out, it was going to be scary. Cooper. He's the best. If you want more Cooper Petagna, you can check him out with Andrew Ivins on the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. New episodes drop every Tuesday and Wednesday. You can also watch at 5 o'clock Eastern on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, or, of course, as always, listen wherever you get your podcasts.